So one of the questions that I get asked really often is, "Hey Vosh, I've got a family member, younger brother, parent, friend, partner, husband, wife, whatever, who seems to be falling down the alt-right pipeline. What do I do? How do I fix it? Please help." And here's the first, very important. This is so important, okay? Here's the first answer, all right? No guarantees. Ever. What I do, changing people's minds, is a stochastic effort. I reach a lot of people, and some of them will change their minds because of the things that I say. However, one thing that is really important to remember is that that process only looks good because you don't get to see everyone who's ever watched a video of mine said, "Wow, what a dumb fuck," and then never watched me again. And there are many people who are like that. Unfortunately, your loved one, family member, friend, whatever, is as, if not more likely to fall into that camp as they are into the camp of people who are converted. So, where does that leave you? If you know them, you're in a better position than I am, because when I reach out to a person, it's through a video anonymously, like, well, I don't know who they are. They just see a video of mine. And that means I don't have any specific insight into their personality, whereas you know them, which means that a lot of my advice is going to be very contingent on your ability to work around their personality quirks. But I'll give you some general advice. And this is legitimately all I have to offer you, okay? So please, God, do not think that if you give me do not think that if you give me any more specific information, I'll be able to help you more specifically. I can't do it, okay? I'm really sorry. I don't know anything more. First of all, there are never guarantees, ever. You may never get your family member or friend back. I'm really sorry. For two, the first thing you need to do is recognize the conditions that have led them to the position they're now in ideologically. Where are they spending their time? Do they have a coworker or a friend group that's pushing them in a given political direction? Are there certain sites they tend to use? Isolate the language they're using. Usually you can tell where they're getting their far-right propaganda from, depending on how they phrase it, Do they talk a lot about grooming gangs, for example? Then that might be more of like a Sargon, like Lauren Southern, like sort of more Eurocentric approach. Do they talk about like the Great Replacement? Do they talk about like Kekistan if they're truly lost? It's important to figure out where they're getting this from, because in my experience, people who fall down the alt-right pipeline are usually doing so because they're fucking losers who have next to nothing else going on in their life, and they need to be given purpose by crazies online. In my experience, that tends to be the case. Usually really successful, well-adjusted people don't fall down that path because why would they? If you feel that a person in that state, is getting their information from a very particular source, you can use that as a kind of stepping stone for figuring out what an aid could be. Very often, people who go through this alt-right phase out of it, not because they get some crazy pro-socialist, pro-feminism argument. They usually phase out of it because their life changes and they just kind of grow apart from whatever influences were leading them down that path. If you're a parent and your kid is in that position, maybe consider, getting them some fucking friends, If you're their mom and they break both of their arms, you will have to jerk them off, do whatever you can to prevent them from falling into this sense of malaise that leads them towards other... That last part was a joke, okay? This is supposed to be a serious video, I'm sorry. You want to do whatever you can to put them in the social and ideological headspace necessary to not fall victim to really stupid political systems. That's one. For two, you have to recognize that sometimes you don't have any control over what kind of media this person is consuming or what they're doing with their life. Like if it's a friend, or maybe not like a super close friend. What do you do then? Well, one of the best things about YouTube is that when people find my videos, they find it of their own volition. Nobody can be well, you can be forced to watch a YouTube video and some Agent Orange, or sorry, like Clockwork Orange shit, but for the most part, when people encounter my content, whether they agree or disagree with it, they choose to open up the video, they choose when to close the video and exit the page. And that's important because when people are confronted on their positions, they get defensive. Every time. You will never be able to debate a person out of a position that they hold, especially if it's a far-right set of positions, because A, hyperfragility and defensiveness are very much intrinsic to far-right political positions, and B, these positions are not usually reasoned into. So aggressively reasoning them out usually won't work. Now, what you should do, and this is what I recommend 99 times out of 100, okay? If it's a friend or a family member, whatever, approach them, say, in no uncertain terms, I'm really worried about the direction you're going politically. I strongly disagree with some of the things that you've been saying, some of the positions you've held, some of the arguments that you've made. I want to talk about them with you, but let's do it sometime in the future. You come to me if you want to talk about it. And then you leave them. They need to make the choice to come to you. If they don't, you can bring it up again in a few weeks. And if they never come to you, then that's it. Your opinion never mattered enough to them for you to have had the ability to change their mind. They need to come to you openly, because to come to you is the first concession they make, a tacit admission that they care about your opinion. And that is the very first thing they need to do, admit they care about your opinion, in order to change their mind. Because the easiest thing reactionaries on the internet can do to avoid getting introspective about their beliefs is to tell themselves they don't need to care about the opinion of the person they're listening to. That's why people in my comment section are always saying shit like fat, man bun, soy boy, whatever. Do they really think they're being funny or engaging by commenting on the superfluous characteristics of my appearance? Probably not. What they're doing is telling themselves they don't need to listen to me because I fit into a group, an archetype, a stereotype that they feel they don't have to listen to. We all do this to an extent, and we do it often with people on the far right as well. This is something humans do in general. They're called thought-terminating cliches. It's a rhetorical technique that people use to insulate themselves from the vulnerability of having to consider opposing opinions. So if they come to you, that means they're admitting to themselves that they care about what you believe, even if it's only to try and change your mind. And then, when they come to you, you'd better be able to argue your point. There's no remedy for this. Find out what specific emotional triggers are inviting them to push for whatever positions you want to move them off of, For example, with transphobes, it's usually motivated not by, as they claim it is, some lofty wish to defend women or some principled belief in the rigidity of gender roles and their association with biology. It's usually really simple. They're just uncomfortable with or disgusted by the existence of trans people. But they don't admit that because that just makes them sound like what they are, which is deeply irrational crybabies. But you, as a person who is close to this person, I would hope, have the opportunity to ascertain what head state they're in and why they believe the things they believe. Are they worried about black people raping the white women? Are they genuinely fearful for the future of Western culture? Do they believe that they recently had a job position or a scholarship taken from them because they, as a white person, are not privileged as highly as minorities and are postmodern, affirmative action-addled institution? You have to find that out. And you have to use that information to target those insecurities, to target those focuses, and move them over on that. And if you want tips on how to best engage with them in that discourse, then that's rhetoric, baby. That's hours and hours and hours long of talking about, how to best convince somebody. But you know them better than I do. So maybe you'll be able to move them over on virtue of that alone. Finely tune your rhetorical techniques for this specific person you are talking to. How much emotion? How much logic? Probably a lot of emotion, because a lot of the alt-righters I argue with are not particularly reasonable people. Which issues are they sensitive over? Can you do this like, hey, we used to be friends, what happened kind of thing? Is there an insecurity in their past you can deliberately target? Hey, I can tell you this from personal experience. If there's a dude who's weirdly misogynistic and you've been friends with them long enough to know they've had a bad experience with women in the past, saying something along the lines of, you're letting your hurt get to you, triggers something in the mind of a man who believes they're perfectly rational that will unsettle them for the rest of their life. Yeah, the who hurt you. There's a reason people get upset at that phrase, who hurt you. It's a very, very good reason. Anyway, if you think that all of this is like overdoing it or you're putting too much thought into it, that's fine. And it's up to you how much you want to engage with this, because far-right people are obnoxious little cunts. And I can't blame you for not wanting to engage fully in them. But please remember that if you're going to give it a shot, give it your best shot, and even then, there are no guarantees. But do your best, you know? And remember, even if it leads to an argument or a disagreement or you hurt their feelings or whatever, remember you're doing it for them too. Alt-righters are miserable. They're fraught with a perpetual, deep-seated insecurity about the state of the world in a way which is both irrational and also completely unrelated to their personal lives. They will ascribe every failure they have ever committed unto the world onto a system of social and cultural and political and economic factors which have literally nothing to do with their behavior or their life path. To be an alt-righter, to believe in the things they believe in, is to consign yourself to a life of failure, unless you're one of the very lucky few who gets to make a lot of money selling other people an alt-right ideology on YouTube. If you can do that, if you're one of the lucky few who gets to sell, you know, it's like being an alt-righter is like man, what's a funny comparison I can make here? Being an alt-righter is like being a professional vuvuzela player or magician. 99% of the time, you're only going to cause misery to yourself and those around you. And the only time you're not is when you get so good at it or so lucky that you get to teach those crafts to another generation of miserable shit-eaters. So remember, you're doing it for them, okay? You're doing it for them. Anyway, good luck. I get asked this so often. This is legitimately the best advice that I have. I've thought about it for a year and a half, for as long as I've had this channel. I've typed this advice out to probably in the realm of hundreds of people over email or Discord DMs at this point. I am finally committing it now to video format, and this is all I have to say. And I hope it works, because your family and your friends need you. They're in a rough spot right now, and their dumb ideas are hurting their brains, and you should help them if you can.